Hello and welcome to this new series of Django with Azure tutorial. We will learn to create a single-page Django web application to display some pictures from NASA using NASA's APOD API. Then, we will host the application on cloud using Azure App Service. To access NASA's APOD API, let's first create an account with NASA's Open API. To do this, you must visit api.nasa.gov. Enter your details and sign up to generate an API key, without which you cannot access the APIs. When you've finished signing up, you will receive an email with your API key. Let's leave the API key in your email at the moment. If you want to learn more about the Open API, you can go back to the Open API page and click the Browse API. The API we will use for this project is the APOD API, which is the first on the list of all the NASA APIs. You can see it has a dedicated endpoint to contact for the astronomy pictures of the day. The endpoint is https://api.nasa.gov/planetary/apod. The parameters that the endpoint accepts are also enlisted here. You must supply your API key with the endpoint as shown. We won't go into more bits and bobs of the API or its parameters right now. Let's now kick off with our Django code. Django is a framework coded in Python, which means you must have Python installed in your machine. If you don't, you can go to the website python.org/downloads and download the correct executable based on your operating system. When the download is complete, you can open the executable and it will show the appropriate options to install. I already have Python in my system and will not go through this process of installation. A word of advice: when you go through the installation process, do not forget to check the box for adding Python path to your environment variables. This is important for your system to know where the Python interpreter lives in your system. I'm using Visual Studio Code for coding. If you're new to coding, you can install it from code.visualstudio.com. Look for the version meant for your operating system. I won't be covering the installation, but I will shed some light on the environment dependencies that we need post-installation. In order to work with Django on Visual Studio Code, this Python extension must be installed. Now, let's go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. In my window, you can see that I've created a main project folder called NASA API. You can do so too, by creating a new folder in your desired location and then pulling that folder in with the file and the Open Folder option. Next, let's install the Python extension. Some of you may see the menu on the left navigation bar, but I have them on the top left. Now, click the extensions icon to bring up the extensions pane. Type Python in the search bar. You will see that the first option in the list called Python is what we're looking for. Since I already have it installed, you can see I have the uninstall button. You will see the install button in the same place instead. Once you've installed it, let's go back to our main window. The first thing we want to do is check if Python is installed and the path is recognized. Open the terminal on VS Code. There are two ways to do this. Either use the shorthand keys Ctrl+Shift+single quote on Windows, or click the terminal on the menu and the first option for a new terminal. Once the terminal is active, type Python :version. If the Python version is displayed, then the Python path is set properly, otherwise check the path in your environment variables. Next, we create a virtual environment to isolate the dependencies and libraries of our project from the main Python location. On the terminal, type Python -m venv-virt and click Enter to create a virtual environment called virt. Feel free to use a name of your choice. When the virtual environment is installed, you can see it in the left navigation pane. We must activate the virtual environment for the project. To do that, type ./virt/scripts/activate and hit Enter. The virtual environment name will appear at the far left of the terminal prompt, which is a visual cue to indicate it is active. We have to ensure the project uses the Python interpreter from our virtual environment. So, click Ctrl+Shift+P to open the settings and type Select Python Interpreter. Then select the option that resembles the interpreter from the virtual environment virt, and this ensure that VS Code is ready for our Django setup. Now, we're ready to install Django. With the virtual environment active, type pip install Django at the terminal. This will install the Django package in your virtual environment. If you see inside the lib folder of your virtual environment, you will see the Django libraries load. Within the scripts folder of your virtual environment, you can see there is a new executable called Django admin. The next step is to create our Django project. At the terminal, type Django-admin start project Django-Nasa. This creates a new project folder called Django-Nasa with some of the boilerplate of the Django framework. This folder is the parent or the root folder of our project. When you look inside the folder, you will find a subfolder with the same name, and inside it are starter files like settings, URLs, etc. Now let's test if our setup was indeed completed. Let's cd into our project root by typing cd Django-Nasa at the terminal. The current directory has changed from the NASA API folder to Django-Nasa. We do this so we're in the same directory as the file manage.py. The manage.py file is important to start our local Django web server. Let's spin up our local host. In the terminal, type python manage.py run server. The server, when ready, is thrown on the terminal. Open a web browser and type the IP address shown on the terminal to access the Django web application. The page will show successfully installed if there are no problems with the Django installation and setup. This concludes our part 1. In the next part we will create our first page to display the APOD pictures. If you have any specific tutorials you need, please comment below. Hit that like and subscribe for more videos on Django and NASA.